Alrighty, everybody out there in the interweb space, welcome back to another Nerdventure. Sorry for the 2 week delay. I know I promised I was going to do videos every week, but I went back up to 5 days a week at the job that I work at, and I sort of had to figure out where I was going to be recording, balancing, and editing stuff. So I did miss a week while I was sorting that out a little bit. But now we are back, and also part of the delay was due to the fact that I was trying to sort of read and absorb and figure out a little bit about what I wanted to say about this series that we're going to be talking about today, which is the Incal and the Jodoverse. And hopefully my time spent kind of reading over this stuff is going to be helpful for you. I am intending this video to be more of an overview and an explanation of what these things actually are and how you can get them, and less of an actual review of the content, more of just giving you teasers of the content, sort of showing you what you can expect from this stuff and what you may want to read to experience this whole epic saga. But it's not going to be as in-depth individually into one piece of this work. That might come a little bit later if people have interest in me talking about one of these books specifically, but really I just sort of wanted to this is one of the things that I get the most questions of, or I see the most questions of online, is how do I get into the Incal, and how do I get into Alejandro Jodorowsky and Mœbius as a comics creative team. So I hope this video will answer some of those questions and kind of give you an overview of the Jodoverse and the world of the Incal, which, by the way, I have decided. I know in my previous videos I might have mentioned Jodorowsky. I think I called him Jodorovsky and Jodorowsky, but I'm going to call him Jodorowsky today. Sort of an H sound. That seems to be what most people are telling me it's pronounced like. So that's going to be my pronunciation just going forward. So if it's wrong, I'm sorry, but hopefully you can just bear with it. And we will dive into some of these books I have next to me and sort of see what his world is all about. All right, so Alejandro Jodorowsky is a well-known Argentinian, I believe, and French film director, sort of an avant-garde film director, and a comics writer are his two primary art forms that people know him for. He was active as a film director. He's still active. I think his most recent film was released maybe in 2013 or so. But he was active a lot in the late 60s doing a few kind of psychedelic westerns. He did El Topo, and then this kind of vision quest, tarot card, alchemy project called The Holy Mountain, which is one of my, if not my favorite movies, definitely visually speaking. His stuff, especially The Holy Mountain, is just stunning. Like, I remember the first time I watched The Holy Mountain, and it's just scene after scene after scene. It is just the most, what's the right word? It's just such a crazy visual allegory for so many things, and as you watch it, the coloring and the way the things are shot is so shocking and well portrayed, and it's really, really magical. So Jodorowsky is this man who's, no stranger to ideas of esoteric, alchemy, universalized themes. He really gets into the whole idea of like meta archetypes and the fact that all storytellers are just pulling these myths and these meta myths from the collective unconsciousness of the human psyche. So he's very much into these very, like I said, esoteric and kind of not Sufism, but sort of like alchemistic and magical kind of ideas. These ways of bringing about ideas and stories into people's brains and their unconsciousness, which arises and gives change to these different things. So his movies are often concerned with these kind of grand scope ideas, and he is also a very, very well-known practicer of tarot cards and sort of the cycle of these different like planets and tarot and stuff. It all factors very heavily into his work. So this is one side of the Incal. The other side is this man named Jean Giraud, or Mœbius is what he's known in most of his works as. He was a French illustrator of comics, and I think he did fine art and paintings and stuff as well, but mostly he's known for his comic book work. In his earlier years, he did more, quote-unquote traditional stuff, like Blueberry was a famous series that he did, a Western series. And when he was doing that stuff, he would sign all of his stuff as Jean Giraud, or like Giraud or Gir or something like that, kind of his name. And later on, he kind of became more interested after he was reading a kind of Mad Magazine and experimental and science fiction comic books. He started drawing and signing as Mœbius, and he wrote some of his own stuff. And his Mœbius work is very, very free-flowing. It is very surrealistic. It's kind of like surrealistic desert shamanism science fiction, if that makes sense. Like, he's famous for works like Arzak, which is a silent book, which certainly influenced Nausicaa and Hayao Miyazaki's work. He's famous for doing a bunch of different series on his own. Was it The Long Tomorrow, and The Airtight Garage is another big one. But he's probably best known and celebrated for his collaborations with Jodorowsky, and specifically his collaboration on the Incal. So to understand where the Incal came from, I would highly recommend watching a movie, and even if you aren't really interested in the Incal, I would definitely recommend watching Jodorowsky's Dune. It was a documentary from a few years ago talking about Alejandro Jodorowsky and his attempt to adapt Frank Herbert's Dune novel into a movie. And to make a long story short, Jodorowsky assembled this group of kind of creative geniuses, including Mœbius, H.R. Giger, himself, and Dan O'Bannon, who was the special effects man that was designed to work on it, or was going to work on it. And he assembled all of these people together to make this epic. He construed it as this huge 20-hour movie of everything in the universe and the whole world, kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey for the 70s, and to really expand people's minds with Dune and this story. Ultimately, it ends up falling apart. The reasons are a little bit cloudy. I think people were scared of making it. Apparently, there were some rumors about Jodorowsky going around Hollywood from Dino De Laurentiis, who ended up picking up the rights to Dune and producing it with David Lynch eventually. So the whole thing falls apart in the late 70s. Dan O'Bannon and the rest of the crew, including Mœbius and H.R. Giger, go on to create Alien. Actually, one of my favorite movies ever. I love Alien. Dan O'Bannon is depressed, and he writes the script for Alien, and he takes these other guys with him. Mœbius did the astronaut suit design for Alien. H.R. Giger obviously did the Alien. He's well known for that kind of like industrial, really creepy artwork. And Jodorowsky does not come with them. He's kind of dejected and taken out of this experience. But the way that they created Dune, the way that he perceived it and really set about putting it out there to the world, was through comic books, actually. He and Mœbius would sit down and they made this entire scripted screenplay for Dune in comic book form. Because Mœbius is well known for being a fantastically speedy artist and still maintaining a high quality. So basically, he and Jodorowsky would sit down and they would write out or draw out. Mœbius would draw, as Jodorowsky sort of dictated to him, the entire storyboard of the movie, and it was eventually collected in this huge big book. Now, in the film, the Jodorowsky's Dune documentary, Jodorowsky seems to be the only one that has a copy of this. Maybe there's another one somewhere else that was sent around for like production purposes, but there aren't very many of them. So, taking this collaboration together that they did, they basically made this Dune comic. Starting in 1981, Jodorowsky and Mœbius published and produced a 6-part series called The Incal. And The Incal is more or less Jodorowsky taking these ideas from Dune, these kind of huge space opera / societal commentary / satire, all of these things that he wanted Dune to be, and basically adapting them into a comic book in the form of The Incal. So The Incal ran from 1981 until 1988. It was published originally in French, as I think the French title was The Adventures of John DeFool, actually, who is the main character, more like the central character, not necessarily a protagonist. And it is 6 issues, but they're like double length issues, so ultimately it would be the length of about 12 normal issues, like 22 pages. I think each one of them is about 50 pages, so like graphic albums is what usually comic books are published as in France. And the two of them collaborated on this, and it was published over the span of 8 years. The Incal is one of my absolute favorite comic books of all time. I think it really transcends a lot of the ideas of what comic books and storytelling can be. It definitely is. It requires you to go in with an open and accepting mind. It's very, very, like I said, satirical, and then it's also very concerned with the esoteric underpinnings of the way the universe works. As I mentioned before, Jodorowsky is very much wrapped up in tarot and sort of giving these like archetypical characters their place in the stories. So the Incal is basically the adventures of John DeFool, this one man, and he represents the 0 card in tarot, which is the Fool. And so he more or less is not... He sort of represents the everyman. He's a coward in most situations. He's scared. He runs away. He is fearful of change and of the responsibility and the weight that is put on him. And all of the characters around him represent different tarot and the different sort of archetypes and symbols of the universe as Jodorowsky sees it. So it's basically about a ragtag group of adventurers, more or less, with John DeFool being sort of the central person through whose eyes we experience most of this. And then there is a character called the Metabaron, who is kind of this mercenary, the most well-trained mercenary in the world, in the universe, in the whole galaxy. There's a series of characters that are the Techno-Priests, which are kind of this religiously obsessed technological worshippers. There's 2 sisters who are the guardians of the Incal. The Incal itself is a kind of a stone, like a 2-piece thing, which grants light and darkness and brings balance to the whole world. I'm not going to attempt to explain the entire thing, but there's a lot of concern in the comic with balances of gender identity, with balances of lightness and darkness. There's a lot about androgynous characters, the empress, the emperoress is what they call it, of the galaxy, is this androgynous male-female. So a lot of it has to do with Jodorowsky tapping into this idea that everybody has aspects of everybody else in them, and that it's all these subconscious layers. And so all of these kind of stories are, like I said, he's pulling from this whole universal archetypes, and he's telling this tale of kind of bringing of balance and lightness and darkness and technology versus humanity, and it's all woven together. It's very funny. I think it's very high concept in a lot of ways, and then also in a lot of ways it's very base. There's a lot of scenes of John kind of just drinking and smoking and screwing what they call homeo whores, which are kind of these like custom-made robot prostitutes that you pick your pieces of that you want. So it's here and there. It's a little bit of everything. Now, the way the Incal is collected has been confusing. Originally in the 80s, it was published in 3 trade paperbacks by Epic Comics. I do not have those. They are not super expensive. I think you can get them for about like $30-ish each. And they're just softcover trade paperbacks, 3 of them, which collect the whole 6 issues, or the 6 graphic albums of the Incal. That was published by Marvel and Epic Comics. Originally, these books were published in French by Les Humanoids Association, or however you would say it in French, which translates to the Humanoids Association. Humanoids was responsible for the original Metabarons, and which then came over to the States as heavy metal. So Humanoids is basically a collective of French artists, including Mœbius and a number of other ones, which published kind of adult science fiction, basically, a high concept, and not afraid to be raunchy and or violent and or whatever. It was really comic magazines for adults. So Humanoids in the US has published a variety of versions of the Incal. There was originally a version which was published in the US which was recolored from the 80s coloring and which had all the nudity censored from it. That version is no longer in print, so I would say if you're looking to pick this up, you don't really have to worry about buying the censored, recolored version because it's highly unlikely that you're going to find that version. What is in print, and the way that you could collect the Incal, there's basically 3 different ways. The cheapest and easiest way you could get it would be to get what Humanoids calls a hardcover trade. So this is not the Incal, this is a different series, this is before the Incal, but their hardcover trades are the size of a regular trade paperback. They don't do a very good job of explaining this on their website, so hopefully this makes some sense. The Humanoids hardcover trades are the size of a regular hardcover. They are a little more expensive than a normal one from Marvel would be. Most of these books are around $50 even for a regular size, but they are of a very high quality. Humanoids uses really nice paper, they use really nice binding, if you can see, and they almost always have book ribbons. So the easiest and cheapest way to collect the Incal would be in the hardcover trade version of the Incal. I believe it's about $55 or so. You can get it for a little bit less on discounted comic book sites. And that collects all 6 versions with the original colors, with no censorship, and in their English translation, obviously. It's a normal size hardcover. There was a oversized, so Humanoids is confusing. This size is their regular one, like I had said. They also have something that they call slightly oversized, which you can see this book is the slightly oversized version of Humanoids. This is basically the equivalent of what Marvel or DC would call a deluxe edition or an oversized hardcover. So this is the hardcover trade from Humanoids. This is a slightly oversized. That's literally what they call it on their website. Their oversized versions are almost absolute size from DC. They're very, very big, and they almost always come with slipcases. There was an oversized slipcase version of the Incal produced. It is very out of print right now, very difficult to find, and very expensive. There were only 750 of them made, and right now I think that they would fetch anywhere from $400 plus online. They're very, very hard to find, but because they're a very desirable middle ground of the oversized sort of collection building and the readability of it. Because the way I have the Incal collected is probably the least practical way to do it, but I love this series so much that I just felt like I had to do this. So, above their oversized version, Humanoids also releases coffee table size books. So check these bad boys out. These are 11 by 17 coffee table size books. This is the first one, the Black Incal. And this is a huge book. It uses really, really nice paper stock. It uses, it's a non-glossy, so very, very just like thick, nice. And it is gorgeous. I mean, it's hard to appreciate Mœbius's art on smaller pages because there's so much detail and intricacy and just beauty in this art. It really is just astounding. If you find yourself loving the Incal, and I'm only showing this to you in this way because it's a little bit difficult to get a shot of the book, and like I said, this is more of an overview than a review, so I'm just giving you a taste of the artwork in this. This is a really cool way to collect it. Now, there are 6 of these. One for each of the original graphic albums. There is a coffee table book. These run anywhere from about, you could probably get them online, most of them, for about $55 a piece. The first one is a little harder to find and might run you in the upwards of 120, 130 to 50 range. So this collects all of them. If you are a crazy Mœbius Incal nut like I am, that is a really cool way to collect them. Like I said, you probably would pay around $60 for each one. So basically you would be paying about $300 and something for the same content that you could get in a $50 hardcover. Just the size is, 3 times larger. So those are basically the 3 ways that you could possibly collect the Incal from Humanoids. In my mind, there are really only 2 viable options. Because the oversize is so hard to find and out of print, I would love to get a copy of it, but I just don't think it's in the cards. the tarot cards, maybe. But really, the 2 ways you could grab it are in a regular hardcover trade from Humanoids, or in these 6 super massive coffee table books. It's up to you. They both collect the same exact amount of content. All of these versions of the Incal collect the same exact content, and they all use original coloring, and they all are uncensored. So anything you buy from Humanoids that's been released from them in the last 5 years, Incal-wise, whether it's the oversized, the coffee tables, or the hardcover regular one, they're all going to use the original colors and be uncensored. So either way, you are getting the product that most people would like. You can, like I said, still get the trade paperbacks from the Epic ones. That is an option, and they would be probably about $60-ish for all 3 trade paperbacks if you're more comfortable with those. But I would highly recommend going with one of the Humanoids releases and just figuring out which one suits your price and your style of readability that you like. All right, so moving on from the Incal, we eventually got what is now called the Jodoverse. So the Incal released, or encapsulated inside of it, I guess, released upon the world so many interesting concepts and ideas, and Jodorowsky went on to expand on a lot of them in more comic books. So I have a selection of them right here. Immediately after the Incal was finished actually the same year in 1988. Humanoids began publishing before the Incal. This is a prequel to the Incal. It sort of sets up how all of the characters got to be where they are at the time of the story starting. The art is by Zoran Janjitov. I've talked about him before. He was chosen by Mœbius in, I think, 1986 or so to continue his work on the Incal because Mœbius was not interested in drawing anymore after he finished the main series. So before the Incal was released between 1988 and 1995, it is a pretty good book. I enjoyed it. I don't think it is something that is going to be essential. It is a little more, I would say, satirical and a little more focused on sort of fleshing out the society and the world that the Incal takes place in, and not so much the characters as much. So depending on how much you feel that you want to get more into the world, and you see these concepts dropped in Incal and you think, oh wow, that would be so cool to examine, this is a really good world building book. This book is available in this hardcover version, which has a price tag of, I believe, again, $50 or so. There's not a price on the back of this one. But you can get this right now in a hardcover version. There's also an oversized slipcase version of this, which I think was about $100 MSRP, which collects the exact same content. It's just in an oversized format with a nice slipcase to go along with the other slipcases. So 2 versions of Before the Incal right now, this hardcover trade and the oversized. Both of them, I would say, are non-essential, but are very good at building out the world of the Jodoverse if you find yourself interested in the Incal and wanting more. Following Before the Incal, Mœbius was still not working on the series, but Jodorowsky went on to expand even more the world of Incal in 2 separate books. One is the Metabarons. This is the complete collection. It retailed for $60. I believe, and I might be wrong about this, it's either in print again right now, or it's getting a new printing very soon. I'm pretty sure it's in print right now. So this collects the entire Metabarons saga, which is basically a history of the Metabarons, and the Metabaron himself, the character in the Incal, is the last of the Metabarons. So this collects sort of their history and the tragedy and the way of life that they lived as these hyper mercenaries. It's penciled by Juan Jimenez, I believe a Mexican comic book artist, and it does have a very... His pencils and his style is very much his own. It has sort of like this... It almost looks to me like an Alien movie, if that makes sense. Like it has this kind of like very technologically driven sort of style to it. I am lukewarm on the actual book itself, but basically, like I was saying, it is also an extension of the Jodoverse. It is directly related to the Incal, and it is tied into characters in that. This book is available in a hardcover trade, this one right here, which has a $60 price tag and is a standard size hardcover. There is also an oversized slipcase edition, but it is out of print and is pretty tough to find. The Metabarons one is not very easy to find. But this one, like I said, the Ultimate Collection, it collects all the different Metabarons series that they had. There's also one more, which was called Metabarons Genesis. I do not have that series. That is a separate series, which I have not read, but it is related in the same family of Jodoverse books. So that is another one that you can be on the lookout for. But Metabarons, if you're interested in the Metabaron character, when you read the Incal, there is a whole family history of him fleshed out in this book. And again, Jodorowsky went on to do a similar thing, this time with the Techno-Priests. I mentioned them before. They are a faction of technology worshipping it's almost like the Catholic Church of Technology in the Incal. And there is a collected edition called the Techno-Priests, the Supreme Collection. This one is penciled by Zoran Janjitov, who also did Before the Incal, which I mentioned earlier. I have right here the oversized slipcase edition of it. The art I'm not wild about. It's pretty slick, and it's colored in a way that I don't care for. Let me see if I can get a decent... the colors are like, the gradients are very... it's just not for me. It looks very digital, and the art seems like very smooth and digital, and it's not my personal favorite. However, as I said before, this is much more of a world-building exercise, and if you find yourself reading the Incal and think that the Techno-Priests and their kind of fascination with religiousizing technology is interesting, then this book is available. This particular oversized one has a cover price of $115. I was able to find it used for about $50 or $60. The oversized version of Techno-Priests, not that hard to find, not nearly as hard as Metabarons. But there is also a Techno-Priests regular size hardcover, just like the Metabarons and the other version. So Techno-Priests still in print. You can pick up the regular size hardcover, which collects all this content, or you can pick up the oversized version if you would like that. And then finally, to put a cap on all this stuff, we have the last Incal, which was published around 2000, I believe. There was a 56-page story drawn by Mœbius, written by Jodorowsky, which was called After Incal. And it was meant to be a way to finish up the series. It only got that one portion, and then it was never finished after that. So that version was sort of a halfway done, half-baked thing. It got shelved after Mœbius stopped working on it and after Jodorowsky went back to rewrite it. And instead, in 2008, we got what is now known as Final Incal. So this right here is the Final Incal oversized slipcover. This one collects the Final Incal in its entirety, and this particular version, and this version only, collects Mœbius's 56-page After the Incal. This is about to get confusing, as if this hasn't been confusing already. Final Incal has been collected in more versions than any other. There is a normal size hardcover trade for Final Incal. There is this oversized slipcase, which is Final Incal plus After Incal from Mœbius. There is also a $200 coffee table edition, which is just Final Incal. And then beyond that, there's like a $600 mega super awesome coffee table edition, which comes with prints and a huge big slipcase, and it's like signed, and maybe, I don't know, Jodorowsky like kissed it and blessed it and whatever. It's like a crazy version of it. So there are more versions of Final Incal than any other, all published by Humanoids. I would recommend trying to pick up the slipcase if you can, because the art on this by Ladrone, I believe his first name is... What is his first name? It just says Ladrone, so I don't know. The art by Ladrone is really, really nice. It does maintain some of the kind of more digitized looking aspects, but I think he strikes a nice balance between capturing what Mœbius was originally doing and what he himself brings as an author, as an artist. It definitely has the best of both worlds, in my opinion. This book is less world building and more of, what's the way to explain it? It very much finishes the character arcs of a lot of the different characters, and it's also much more about sort of the universal struggle between the light and darkness that emanates from humanity, whether it be a reliance on things that are more oppressive or a reliance on things that are more freeing, on the sort of two sides. This book is more directly about finding the balance, whether it be between man and woman and kind of gender identities, or between the light and the dark, and sort of the different ways of people engaging with the world and the world around them. It definitely feels like a cap on the series. Whether it's going to make you happy about how this whole Jodoverse and the series ends is going to be up to how you absorb the rest of this. Because it does, it was written in 2008. That's a full 20 years after the original Incal stopped being published. So if you think about this as something that puts a capstone on it and encapsulates where Jodorowsky is as a writer and as a person, a creative person now, it does have a little bit more, I don't know what the word is. It's not as ambiguous. There's not as much ambiguity as there sort of feels like there is in Incal. It feels like he is sort of laying out more of what he feels to be a correct thing to strive for, or some way to behave as a person that you will kind of elevate yourself above the darkness and the badness that a lot of people try to spread on the world by kind of buying into these systems of oppression and these systems that kind of keep everybody in the same place. Whether it be there's actually a lot, which I have not mentioned so far. There's a lot about aristocracy and sort of class systems in the Incal and in this book. So whether it be religious kind of systems of oppression or class-based systems of oppression, it does feel like he is railing against those a little bit more specifically when he talks about kind of the way that the characters break down those systems in the end of his books. So that, I think, is hopefully a pretty good overview of the Jodoverse and the ways that you can get into this series. I would highly recommend starting with the Incal. I know that the other books, there's a prequel and there's more world building stuff, but I think the Incal is the right place to get your head around what Jodorowsky and Mœbius are trying to do and create. And then after that, you can sort of decide piecemeal what parts of it you want to learn more about. If you are interested in the Techno-Priests, then there's a book for that. If you're interested in the Metabarons, there's a book for that. If you're interested in the world, there's Before the Incal, and if you're interested in where the characters go, there's Final Incal. So it does kind of give you this really nice ability to figure out for yourself what is important about the Incal. But I think if you go into this with an open mind, especially the Incal itself, there's going to be something in there for everybody, whether it be the political sort of satires that they put on, the religious satires that they put on, or the esotericism that Jodorowsky is known for, or just the art and the action. I mean, Mœbius's art alone stands the test of time like almost no other piece of artwork from the 80s does, I'd say. And I think, although it is confusing right now, the way Humanoids has laid out their website and their orders and everything, all of these things are in print in some respect. Whether you might have to settle for the standard hardcover for all of them, not getting like an oversized, really nice deluxe treatment. That is not available for all of them without having to pay a considerable chunk of change. But for all of these different things I've mentioned, Techno-Priests, Metabarons, Before, After, and or Before Final, and the regular Incal, there are all versions of these from Humanoids, uncensored, using nice coloring. At least for the Incal series. The newer ones, their coloring is hit or miss depending on how you enjoy digital coloring. And you can definitely go pick them up and start reading them. And then if you decide that you're going to be, a fanboy or fangirl or whatever of this series, something that you really like, then you can kind of think about moving into the deluxe editions, whether it be coffee table books or the oversized hardcovers. Especially some of the oversized hardcovers are tricky to come by. It is always kind of ambiguous as to whether Humanoids is going to keep putting things in print, because right now Dark Horse has all of the rights, I believe, to the Mœbius estate, and they are going to start printing Mœbius things. I think Humanoids still has rights to stuff that Jodorowsky and Mœbius produced together. So I'm pretty sure that the Incal and all of its Jodoverse relatives are going to stay with Humanoids and are going to be done in these really nice high quality printings. Every book that I showed today is universally of extremely high quality. They all use sewn binding. They all have really nice boards. They all have really nice thick paper. I mean, Humanoids, you pay a premium, but they are of a very exceptional quality. So if you are somebody who's looking to get into European comics, and especially the Incal is something that gets thrown around a lot in underground or science fiction loving comics discussions, I would highly recommend seeking out this series. Start with Incal, find what makes you tick from that series, and then move into the Jodoverse from there, because it is extremely rewarding to get your hands on all of this stuff, and hopefully it will open your experience a little more to Jodorowsky himself, some of his films and some of the themes that he touches on in there, and then go into Mœbius and some of the more surrealist and less traditionally storytelling based properties that he's worked on or created, these creations he has, which are either silent or they sort of bend the way that you tell stories. These two did other comics together. They did a comic called The Eyes of the Cat. I know they did, what was the other one? About a woman, the Sacred Woman of the Mad Heart, I believe. Something like that. they did continue to work together, and they made some just really incredible comic books, really incredible contributions to the medium. So, give these guys the respect they deserve. And if that's not enough incentive for you, I believe Nicholas Winding Refn is supposed to be adapting the Incal into a film. So there's that. I don't know. I mean, there's been films made of things previously considered to be unfilmable before, but this is going to be a heck of a task to take on. I don't envy this guy in the least bit. I don't understand how he's going to produce something that even remotely touches on the themes here, because it's so fantastical and it moves so vastly, and it really is an adaptation of this whole space opera Dune thing. It has so much of Dune and the society and the way that Herbert built it into this structure that I just can't imagine it being adapted into a movie that's anything remotely understandable. But he is in Jodorowsky's Dune. Nicholas Winding Refn is, and he talks about knowing Jodorowsky and getting the inside scoop on the original making of Dune. So if anybody is the one to do it, I guess he should take a crack at it, and we'll see what exactly comes out. Hopefully it's not, stuck in development hell forever like Sandman from Joseph Gordon-Levitt or whatever. But at some point in the future, there is supposed to be a film. Who knows if it'll happen. Alright guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. For more content that is similar, give me a subscribe, and I bring different types of reviews, upcoming releases, and different collection tours and hauls and stuff like that. And please leave a comment in the video about your experience with the Incal, Mœbius, Jodorowsky, or any of those kind of things, because I love reading the comments and seeing people engage with my videos. It's really exciting for me, and I like responding to them all. So please, please, please engage on YouTube as much as you care to. If you happen to like my insights and personality to some extent, you can always find me on the Get a Cat, Get a Horse podcast, a new podcasting venture I've launched with a fellow YouTuber, Nerd How, aka Amani, or maybe Amani, aka Nerd How, however you want to say it. I'll have a link to our podcast, which you can listen to on SoundCloud or iTunes. We do about hour-and-a-half to 2 hour long shows. We're sort of figuring out the time of them, but we're 3 episodes in right now. The third one is about to release, and we just talk about different pop culture and nerd culture news and topics that we find interesting, things that we're reading and consuming right now. It's a really fun time. We are looking for people to follow along and engage with us, so either find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, or facebook.com/getacatgetahorse. You can also find me on Tumblr at tumblr.com/thenerdventurer, where I post mostly different illustrations, covers, and things that pop up on my Tumblr, just art that I find interesting. And I will be back, hopefully in a couple days, with another video dissecting the previews catalog for March. I hope this was helpful and informative for you guys. As I said, please give me a like and a comment if you want to chat more about Mœbius, Jodorowsky, and the Incal. And I will see you all next time. Keep nerding ahead. Full steam? That was a bad sign-off. But anyway, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.